and I had contacted them and they said, Craig will send you a statement. And I said, cool, but I don't want a statement. I would like to talk to them. You know, we have some pretty serious questions here that have come up over the past several months. And they were not at all willing to talk to me.
We're going to start talking to people about BG Wealth
Let's
Group.
do it.
And it's a big scandal, a big fraud, a big scam.
We talked about it.
A lot of people's money. We talked about it once before.
Yeah.
We've put a whole show together. We've got journalists and victims, and we invited the alleged scam artist, and he did not reply. He's not. Not.
Yeah. What do you say?
Nothing.
We're a news agency here.
This is a newscast.
They didn't reply to requests for comment.
That's right. No comment.
Yeah.
No comment. No comment.
Yeah.
Is no
so
comment.
We'd like to put that out there that we did
We
try.
want to put that out there, but there's a lot. I mean, listen, this is a decent sized case, TK, but it's really not that big compared to some of the other stories that have been out there and some of the other ones that, you know, have happened in Toronto or GTA or Ontario's past, I guess. But
look
for
at
these
one blower.
people,
One
man,
blower is the same thing.
well, not yet. It's not. Not yet. It's not.
You're telling me that those Korean investors are going to get their money back?
Well, they have ways, those guys, but this is a little different, TK.
Yeah.
These are like older, nice people that got rooked innocently out of a bunch of money. But we're going to bring on a journalist from Owen Sound, the Owen Sound Current. Her name,
give us the scoop.
believe, let me just make sure I don't want to make a mistake. Miranda Miller from the Owen Sound Current. We're going to bring her on first to give us a little setup here. Because she is like on.
She broke the case.
She's building the case. She's putting light on this thing. She seems to be one of the driving forces behind this whole shenanigans. Hopefully she has her video and audio working properly. We're going to have to warn the audience that we probably won't have the best quality of audio today, other than
have faith,
of course.
Have faith.
I have faith. A little bit.
Yep.
Miranda, are you there?
I'm here.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Hi, Miranda. Yeah. This is TK. I'm Darryl, and welcome to the Canadian Real Estate Show.
We gave you a great introduction already, but you know, you'll see that when you see the full episode air. But why don't you give yourself a little bit of a more detailed introduction of who you are and sort of what drew you to the topic we're going to be talking about today.
Sure. So I'm the editor of the Owen Sound Current. We are a small community-based publication in Owen Sound, Ontario. We started writing about BG Wealth Group in February 2024. That was the first article I put out. That was when we were notified by one of their commercial tenants that they received notice that there was a back taxes issue. And so that was sort of the first red flag. We had been aware of BG Wealth since 2020. When they first came to town, you know, they even had city staff in their promotional videos. They were trying to make a big splash. You know, we're buying up these high profile buildings. We're going to turn everything around here. But it became clear that things weren't as they seemed. And so after that first article, I started hearing from investors saying, what do you mean there's a back taxes issue? What do you mean there are mortgage holders? You know, we already bought this building. The investment fund owns the building. So things quickly unraveled after that.
So your first knowledge of this was somebody bringing it to your attention because of some back taxes. And so you dug into it a little bit more and you were like, okay, let me see, you know, see what's going on here. You don't know the scale, the magnitude of it. It's just simply like, you know, that these guys have been making these big promises to everybody in town. And then all of a sudden, after you wrote that article, people are reaching out to you saying like, whoa, wait a second. And more will be revealed, right? That you just keep getting more and more information about how deep this really goes.
Right. The first one was a commercial tenant, a small business owner, really concerned. Like, what does this mean? Am I going to lose the space that my building is in? Is the city going to sell the building out from under us? So that was where their concern came from. And then once we started hearing from people in Toronto and Barrie and Ottawa, it became clear that there was a lot more going on than just a back taxes issue.
Did the principals of the company at that time speak with you? Like in the very beginning, before it was public, before you even published the article, were they willing to talk to you?
No, they were very difficult to get a hold of. And I tried reaching Claudia Harvey and Craig Dunkerley both through LinkedIn, calling their offices, any phone number that I could find, any email address. It was actually through a staff member that I finally got a response. And I had contacted them and they said, Craig will send you a statement. And I said, cool, but I don't want a statement. I would like to talk to them. You know, we have some pretty serious questions here that have come up over the past several months. And they were not at all willing to talk to me. So I did receive one statement, but when it became clear that they were not responding to investors, the taxes still hadn't been paid. That's when I did a Freedom of Information request to find out just how far in debt they were and on how many of these buildings that they had advertised these big returns for in Owen Sound.
So TK, just so you know, and just so everybody else out there knows, I mean, this Craig Dunkerley guy, if you go back and you look into him and you're trying to do due diligence on him because you're thinking about investing with him, I mean, he had articles on the internet talking about how he was selected as the top business innovator of the year by some international association. He was apparently one of his companies got some funding from Kevin O'Leary through Shark Tank. Like he had built up a credibility, and a lot of these investors were brought in by previous investors that had already been receiving interest payments, and it had, I guess, seemed pretty legit. And I mean, some of these people put in like 600 grand, TK. Okay. So, and if you look at the documentation, I mean, it seems pretty legit if you don't read the guy's body language and kind of look him in the eyes, right? But like if you're going on what has been created as like it looks like a totally legit thing, right? But if you dig deeper, it's obvious that, you know, this is not something that he's gone through for the first time, right?
Okay. So one of the things, Brandon, you know more about this. This is kind of my take on it, or at least my opinion after I went when I read the first article. We talked about it on our show. I don't know if it was your article or subsequent articles that other people had put out there, but a lot of the times they start out legitimate and that it is a real type of company that is providing returns and that they are doing well and that the buildings are appreciating and that they are refinancing them and everything's going well. The market turns, a few tenant mishaps, a few construction overruns, a few personal issues. Next thing you know, you get behind and you're just trying to raise more money to keep up with the interest payments. And then you end up taking on way more. You build a house of cards and now you just don't have the equity to pay everyone back. And like, do you feel like that's what this is? Or do you feel like maybe right from the beginning, this was meant to be what most people would call a Ponzi scheme?
I'm really not sure. I can tell you what we see through their Instagram profiles and their web presence. It's pretty slick. You know, it's Claudia had advertised at one point that she was in a book right next to Oprah. But when you dig into that a little more, it was a paid placement. So anyone could have been in the book next to Oprah. You know, they've marketed this wealth system. You can have the lifestyle we have, you know, building generational wealth, really sort of the marketing shtick that preys on people's instinct that they're missing out on something, you know, the fear of missing out. It could very well have been that they thought they could pull this off. They did have the Dig It business, Darryl, that's what you were referring to, where Claudia founded it with another woman. They went on, I think it's called Dragon's Den or Shark Tank, one of the two. And Kevin O'Leary bought into the company. So they did have a success there. However, last April, Craig Dunkerley signed the bankruptcy papers for Dig It with some $6 million in unsecured creditor losses. So that one's also gone sideways.
Which I actually saw a document that showed that some of the money from this, the real estate fund, was siphoned into the Dig It company before it went bankrupt. And that money's gone now too.
And this is something else that we've heard. Investors found out that Craig and Claudia were starting, like they tried to start a hamburger chain in Wyerton. They got into a conflict in Wyerton with a business owner. I believe it was New Orleans Pizza. So they bought the building and then they tried to force the pizza chain out so they could start their own pizza chain. The there's a lot of numbered companies, money going from one to the other, doing things that the people who invested never understood they were a part of. They thought it was pretty cut and dried. The way it was marketed in the pitch decks and on the website was, here's these 5 properties in Owen Sound. It's a depressed area. It'll be the next boom town. Here are some
Owen
local,
Sound, yeah.
yeah, some local people who will tell you how great we are. They built a bit of credibility like that.
Mhm.
And in the way that you said, where there were some people getting returns. So they had some good testimonials. They had people going out and doing the work of sales for them. And so I interviewed a gentleman last week and published the article just a couple days ago, a man from Nepean, Ottawa, who lost $30,000. And he admitted that the social pressure was part of it. He saw his friend making these 10 to 14% returns. And he's like, why am I only making 4? It's the same sort of setup. It's just a 1-year term loan. And that is even more, cut and dried. He should have been paid at the end of the 1 year. There's no question. There's no cash flow issue that should stop a term loan from being paid out. So those, I'd really love to ask Craig these questions. I've sent them over and over by email. He will not consent to an interview.
No, we
Well,
tried to get him on
because
the
things
show.
are alleged, right? We have to sort of talk in a certain way, but I mean, there's a possibility that this was, meant to be set up like that right from the beginning, right? And that all the different things that they were putting in place with their articles and the ads and giving interest to the people in the beginning, like it's possible, right? And we deal with a lot of investors, Darryl and I, in different levels, and there's definitely a lot of people who raise money like them. There's a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
honest, good investors who raise money just like them through different properties, different partnerships, different, these type of structures that end up paying back everybody and do very well. And, people will rave about those people. And, sometimes you think, well, if the market turns or, something goes wrong, it could happen to anybody. But when you start looking into things like you have so like in depth, looked into all these articles and searching online and freedom of information and all that kind of stuff, you start to really get a sense that that they might have been up to something right from the beginning, and that they really were not hoping that everyone. The whole point of being a investor is that your focus should be on how do I make my investors money. Like that should be
Right.
like at the core of your heart. It shouldn't be anything else. It should be like I want to make sure that if I lose money, that's okay. But my investors are the ones that I am here for in order for them to make money. And if that's not in your, personality or character, things like this can happen, right?
Absolutely. And I think, a reasonable person understands things can go wrong. It's when we see that, in November 2023, he ceased all payments, notified investors, we have a cash flow problem. That's fine. But then why are you still selling the same product in May 2024 and telling people they're going to get cash
Mm.
distributions? We saw the website change several times over the past 2 months, and they're selling this product again right now
Today.
on the website
Oh yeah,
today.
yeah. Yeah, there was
Oh
like a new blog
my.
post a few days ago or a week ago,
Yes.
right?
Okay.
It's
And
Wow.
this is
crazy.
where I look at the trouble the victims are having being sent to different police jurisdictions, and police say it's a civil issue. And then, they try to go to court and they can't find the guy. When does it become a criminal issue of fraud? I think when you have this many people saying, I haven't got my money back, people can't find the guy. He's not
Mhm.
responding to media, and he's still selling. That
Mhm.
that should be a big clue
What
to
about
law
securities?
enforcement and regulatory agencies.
The
Yes,
Securities Commission. So
Ontario Securities.
what have they have you contacted them?
Yes, they will
Sounds
not confirm or deny if there is an investigation. They said that's standard practice.
mm,
They are inviting anyone with concerns to contact them, and I would urge people to do that because they're dealing with investments, it is a regulated industry. And
mhm.
so they do have the authority to press charges. They're called pseudo criminal charges. It could be up to a 5-year jail term. But they can also seize assets and determine how those are distributed back to victims. So that
Mhm.
is one avenue that victims should be pursuing.
Yeah, that would be like we are always cautious of that anytime anybody's trying to raise money or anything like that. Like, you have to follow the securities laws, and
Generally.
it seems like that would be a no-brainer. Like when you just told me that there's still advertising on there, because I mean you're supposed to be dealing with accredited investors. So,
Yeah.
what type of verification do you feel like the people who were brought into this were accredited investors by definition? Or do you feel like he was basically, I'll take money from anybody?
I feel like some of the people I've spoken with had no idea what they were getting into. And we're talking about people who invested their children's college fund or their retirement savings or their spouse passed, and this is the only money they had left to live off of.
Yeah.
And they thought, well, this person can do a little better for me than the bank can. And so that's, a really tragic situation that some of these people find themselves in.
Yeah, it was the classic, take your money out of your house and put it in here, and you're going to make a wonderful spread and everybody's going to be happy. Okay, listen, Miranda, we have a whole room of victims waiting to tell their stories. So I want to ask you one last question, and thank you so much for doing this with us and setting up the stage for all the people that have gone through this. And I think they are all very appreciative, and we want to thank you for shedding light and doing all the work that you've done. We're going to post
hope it helps,
your articles down below in the description, and anybody watching, if you guys can, help us spread this would be very much appreciated.
We don't have that many people watching. We want to warn you, Miranda. Okay, but
only
like
a few
my mom,
billion.
I know for sure watches it every week, and I know a few other people. But
let me ask you, while we have you on, if they were here or they were watching and you could ask them anything and you could get an answer, what is the big question that you would like answered by these two wonderful people?
I mean, I'd like to see the documentation. So in the email, the one statement Craig did send, he took exception with some of the things that victims are saying. So show us the money, show us the proof.
Where's the money?
Where's the documentation? Show us the statements. I think the time for pat answers is over, and it's time to see some real numbers behind the whole BG Wealth Group investment fund. And thank you both so much for having me on. I appreciate you helping to spread the word about this story.
No problem.
We're doing our best. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll be in touch, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you both.
Okay. TK, it's going to get crazier. Get out your tissues, because I got a feeling we're going to hear some sad stories now.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Well, we got a background now, so people understand what we're dealing with here. It's not like, you got somebody who, swung a few hammers and, hit the wrong nail a couple times. And next thing you know, he's underwater on a couple properties. He's not only, running advertisements in order to be able to gain people's trust, but going into projects, overfunding them. And then after, everything has basically, collapsed from underneath him, still trying to raise money, cutting off interest payments for some investors, but promising interest payments for the new ones. And right till today is still
out there hustling. And it's crazy. It's
eventually, you call a duck, you know what I mean? If it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's got to be a scam here, So it's like, it's alleged, but you know what? I'm pretty sure nobody's going to sue us because, people don't really watch this show, but it sounds like a pretty clear, open and shut case on what's been going on here.
You would think, right? But this guy's out there writing books on like how to empower women in business, and like he's writing new blogs and
how to buy real estate, without your own money,
with other people's money,
which is a great strategy, and
it's a good way to do it.
There's a lot of books on it, but you gotta give people back their money. So,
are you looking for the best merch store on the planet? Well, we got the shit for you. Coming in at low prices where we barely make any money off of whatsoever, you can get the greatest real estate merchandise on this platform. Just look at this very flamboyant man putting on this great stuff. He looks great, he's dancing great, and boy does he look sexy in that merchandise. I tell you, buy this for anybody, you buy this for yourself. You will be not only repping the greatest Canadian real estate podcast in this world, but you will also be looking hella good doing it.